All right, welcome. So it is so great to be here with you. I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today, we will be talking about Indistractable, how to control your attention and choose your life. And I want to tell you just for a quick moment about when I decided that I had to reassess my own relationship with distraction. And I really had to reassess my relationship with distraction when there was one particular moment in my life. This happened a few years ago when I was with my daughter. And we had this beautiful day planned this afternoon, just some quality daddy-daughter time. And I remember we had this book of activities that dads and daughters could play together. And one of the activities in this book was to ask each other this question. If you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want? And I remember this question verbatim, but I cannot tell you what my daughter said, because in that moment, for whatever reason, I don't even remember why, I decided there was a good reason to check my phone for something real quick. And by the time I looked up from my device, my daughter was gone. She had left the room because I was sending her a very clear message that whatever was on my phone was more important than she was. And she went to go play with some toy outside. Now, if I'm honest with you, it wasn't just with my daughter. It would happen to me when I was at work and I would say, oh, I need to focus on that project. And yet somehow 20, 30, 45 minutes later, I was doing everything but the thing I said I was going to do with my time. It would happen when I would say, oh, I'm definitely going to exercise today and I'm certainly going to eat right, but I didn't and I wouldn't. And so if you ask me today, what superpower do I think is most important? What superpower would I most want? I would tell you I would want the power to be indistractable. You see, becoming indistractable is the skill of the century. There is no area of your life, your physical health, your psychological well-being, your relationships, of course, your career, all of these things require you to be able to control your attention, to choose your focus. This is ultimately how we decide to live our life. Now, we can take some solace in knowing that this is not a new problem, that in fact, people have been struggling with distraction since time immemorial. In fact, the Greek philosopher Plato called it akrasia in the Greek, the tendency that we have to do things against our better interest. And if Plato was struggling with this problem 2,500 years before the iPhone and Facebook and the internet, well, this is just part of the human condition. People have always struggled with distraction from one thing or another. Now, what I'd like to offer to the conversation is a new way of looking at distraction. And let's start by really understanding, what does that term even mean? What is distraction? And everybody thinks they understand this term. I definitely thought I understood this term until I tried to figure out, well, what's the opposite of a distraction, right? The great way to know whether you really know what something is do you know the antonym of that thing? Can you name the antonym of distraction? Most people will tell you the opposite of distraction is focus, right? Isn't that the opposite of distraction? Not exactly. The opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction, if you look at the origin of the word, is in fact traction. That traction and distraction come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. And you'll notice that both traction and distraction end in the same six-letter word, A-C-T-I-O-N, that spells action. So reminding us that distraction is not something that happens to us, but in fact, an action we take. So traction, by definition, is any action that pulls us towards what we say we're going to do, things that we do with intent, things that move us closer to our goals and help us become the kind of person we want to become. Those are acts of traction. The opposite of traction is distraction. Distraction is any action that pulls you further away from what you said you would do, further away from your goals, further away from becoming the kind of person you want to become. Those are acts of distraction. Now, is this just semantics? Is this some funny wordplay? No, I think it's really important in helping us understand how to become indistractable, because I would argue that any action can be traction or distraction based on forethought, based on what we plan to do with our time. Let me give you a great example. For years, I would sit at my desk, I would get into work in the morning and I would say, okay, there's my to-do list. I've got 100 things to do on it, but there's that thing that I've been procrastinating on, that I've been putting off, that I know I need to work on. Let me get to it. I'm going to get started. Nothing's going to get in my way. I'm going to focus. I'm not going to procrastinate. Here I go right now. Let me get started. but first let me just check some email, right? How many of us have done that? Let me just look at my to-do list. I've got those easy things. Let me just tick some of those easy things off my to-do list because, then I get some momentum, right? And I'm doing worky stuff, right? I'm working on productive things. Email, I got to check email sometime today, don't I? And here's the thing. I was succumbing to the most dangerous, pernicious, tricky form of distraction, which is when distraction fools you into prioritizing the urgent and the easy at the expense of the important and hard work that we know is what we have to do to move our life and careers forward. But we justify it to ourselves and we say, well, email, I got to do email sometime today, right? But if it's not what you plan to do with your time, it is by definition a distraction. And it is the worst kind of distraction because we don't even know it's happening to us. So anything, even the work stuff, even the productive stuff, can be a distraction if it's not what you plan to do with your time. Conversely, anything can be traction. Okay. Now, I know we hear a lot in the media these days from these Chicken Little tech critics that tell us that social media is hijacking our brains, that technology is addicting us, that somehow if I check Facebook or YouTube or watch a movie on Netflix, that's bad. If I play a video game, oh, that's frivolous. But watching a football game on TV, that's okay. Why? Why? There's nothing wrong with any of these actions as long as we do them with intent, as long as we are doing them according to our schedule and our values. Let's stop moralizing and medicalizing these perfectly normal behaviors that are wonderful if we use them according to our values and our schedule, not the tech companies. So anything can be an act of traction as long as it is done with intent. As Dorothy Parker said, the time you plan to waste is not wasted time. Anything you want to do, take a walk, pray, meditate, watch a Netflix movie, play video games, it doesn't matter. If you do it with intent, it is traction. And in that case, anything else would be a distraction. So we've got traction, we've got distraction. What prompts us to take these actions? What leads us towards distraction? Well, we have two kinds of triggers. The first kind of trigger is the usual suspects. We've all heard of these. These are called external triggers. These are the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that can lead us towards distraction. This is what we tend to blame, right? It's our phones, it's the beeps, the boops, the buzzes. But it turns out, get this, studies have found that only 10% of the time that people check their phones, 10%, do they check them because of an external trigger. How can that be? What's the other 90%? The other 90% is not what is happening outside of us, but rather what is happening inside of us. These are called internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape from. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty. These are the root causes of 90% of our distractions. And it is the first place that we must begin if we are going to become indistractable. We have to realize that we need to recognize and learn how to deal with discomfort that we are trying to escape. Because listen, whether it's too much news, too much booze, too much Facebook, too much football, we will always find distraction from something if we do not know how to deal with these uncomfortable emotional states. Let me tell you, folks, write this down. Time management is pain management. Time management is pain management. If we don't learn how to deal with discomfort, something, anything will always distract us. Why? Because this has been happening since the time of Plato. This is not a technology problem. It is a problem with dealing with uncomfortable sensations in a healthy manner. So how do we deal with this? How do we begin to master these internal triggers so that we can master these uncomfortable states as opposed to them becoming our masters? The first step, psychologists tell us, is to note the sensation. By simply writing down what is that preceding sensation, what is that emotion, anxiety, stress, fatigue, loneliness, boredom, what is it that we are feeling that we are looking to escape from? Simply writing it down on a piece of paper is a huge first step to start gaining agency over it. Next thing we want to do is to get curious about that sensation, not contemptuous. What does contemptuous look like? You see, most people fall into two categories when it comes to dealing with distraction. We call them the blamers or the shamers. The blamers, these are the people who say, oh, it's big bad Facebook. It's my iPhone. It's my boss. It's Twitter. Oh, here's one I hear every day. It's the modern world these days. As if we can get into some mythical time machine and go back to a time that never existed without distraction. Didn't happen, right? And we don't have such a time machine. We can't go back to a time before these technologies. So blaming things outside of ourselves is futile. It doesn't change anything. The other extreme is the shamer. This is what I used to do. These are people who shame themselves. Oh, I have a short attention span. I'm no good with time management. You see, I'm not very good with this stuff. I can't be on time. I just can't seem to get things under control. And we shame ourselves and we think that somehow we are broken or somehow defective. And there's nothing wrong with us. It's simply that we keep shaming ourselves, which of course makes us feel even worse. Shame is a very powerful internal trigger. And what do we do when we feel internal triggers? We look for relief with more distraction. So blaming doesn't work. Shaming ourselves doesn't work. The only rational response is to be what we call a claimer. A claimer claims responsibility not for how they feel. Most people don't realize this. You have no control over your feelings. Once you have an urge, you already had it. You can't control it. If you feel the urge to sneeze, you already felt the urge to sneeze. The only thing you can claim responsibility for is how you will respond to that urge, hence the term responsibility. Do you sneeze all over everyone and get them sick? No, you take out a handkerchief and you cover your face because that's the responsible thing to do. So we don't control our feelings. We only control how we respond to our urges and our feelings. And so understanding and being curious about those sensations is a wonderful way to help us start mastering those internal triggers. One of the best techniques that we know, and this is not something I made up, comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. It's been around for decades, very well-studied technique from acceptance and commitment therapy called surfing the urge. You see, these uncomfortable emotional states, we think they're going to last forever, right? When we feel anxious, when we feel stressed, when we feel uncertain, we feel like we're always going to experience that uncomfortable sensation, but that's never the case. So what we can do is to learn to surf the urge, to realize that these sensations are fleeting. If we can ride these sensations like a surfer on a surfboard, this is how we can allow them time to pass over us. So what does this look like? One technique that I use almost every single day is called the 10-minute rule. The 10-minute rule says that you can give in to any distraction. Okay, anything it is that you want to do, whether it's check email or scroll social media or eat that piece of chocolate cake if you're trying to lose weight, you can do it. Go for it. Do it. But not right now. Do it in 10 minutes because strict abstinence backfires. Strict abstinence backfires. Not always, but when we have frequent external triggers in our environment, we don't want to use strict abstinence. Why? Because it's like pulling on a rubber band. When you tell yourself, don't do something, right? It's like pulling on a rubber band. You pull, 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 pull. Eventually, you can't pull anymore. The rubber band's going to snap. It's not going to go back to where it started. No, it's going to ricochet across the room. So when we tell ourselves, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll do it. Guess what? That relief of the discomfort of telling ourselves no feels good. We register that relief of telling ourselves not to do something as pleasure. This is why digital detoxes don't work. This is why diet detoxes don't work, because you're relieving the tension by doing the thing you don't want to do. So when it comes to these frequently occurring external triggers, we don't tell ourselves no. That will backfire. We tell ourselves not yet. Not yet. I can do that. I can scroll social media. I can have the cigarette. I can eat the chocolate cake. I'm a grown man. I can do what I want, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. And I use this technique every single day when I write. You know, I've written 2 bestsellers, countless articles. I've been in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, and writing is still really freaking hard. Every day it's a struggle. All I want to do is go Google something or check email or scroll social media, anything to escape the pain of having to write. It is hard work. So here's what I do. I take out my phone, I set a timer for 10 minutes, I put the phone down, and now I have a choice to make. I can either get back to the task at hand, the thing that I plan to do, or I can surf the urge. I can sit with the sensation for just 10 minutes and let that sensation crest and subside, just like a wave. And my job is to explore that sensation with curiosity, not contempt. And what you will find, as I found, 90% of the time within those 10 minutes, by the time those 10 minutes are up, you'll be right back to the task at hand. Okay, a very, very effective technique. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg. A lot more to learn in my book. I hope you'll check it out. There's a lot more in there. This is just one of the techniques that you'll learn. What we want to do is to arm ourselves with these arrows in our quiver that we can take out whenever we feel these uncomfortable emotional states, so that they lead us towards traction rather than distraction. Now, let's move on to the next step of becoming indistractable, making time for traction. Making time for traction acknowledges that we cannot call something a distraction unless we know what it distracted us from. Write this down. You cannot call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. If you can't tell me what it was you planned to do with your time, what are we complaining about? What exactly did you get distracted from? And so having your day open with a bright open calendar of nothingness, of course you're going to get distracted. Everything is a distraction. So having spontaneous days and achieving all your life goals do not go together. Those days are over. What we have to do is to start keeping a time box calendar. We have to plan out how we want to spend our time. This is the most well-studied time management techniques. Thousands of peer-reviewed studies have shown that this technique, this is called making an implementation intention, just a fancy way of saying planning out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, and not just the work stuff, okay? I'm not just talking about the productive work stuff. I want you to plan time to play video games, if that's what you're into, to meditate, to be with your kids, to watch Netflix, whatever it is you want to do with your time. As long as that's in your calendar and that's what you plan to do with your time, that is traction. And anything else in that case would be a distraction. So I love social media. I use it every day, but I use it on my schedule, not the tech companies. Now, I know many of you right now are thinking, ooh, this is kind of scary. I can't plan out every minute of my day. I need to be spontaneous. I need to be creative. Let me tell you something. That is the fear of actually doing what you're capable of doing with your life. If you feel that tension of, ooh, I don't want to do this, that is your subconscious realizing that this technique will actually hold you accountable to doing the things you fear doing. So lean into that. Give it a shot. Try a weekend afternoon. That's how I started. I planned out 3 hours with my daughter. That's how I started time boxing. We call it planned spontaneity. I don't plan out every 15-minute increment. I had a big fat increment of 3 hours to be with my daughter on a Saturday. That was my first foray into time boxing once I learned how powerful this technique is. Now, why is it planned spontaneity? Because we plan to do something. Now, what are we going to do? I don't know. Maybe we'll go to the park. Maybe we'll get some ice cream. I don't really know. But why do I block that time? Because it reminds me of what I will not be doing. I will not be on social media. I will not be taking a business call. I will be with my daughter, both in body and mind. And blocking out that schedule for someone I love very much ensures that I will give her the time and attention that I promised I would give her. So start with a weekend afternoon, then expand it to 1 day, 2 days. What you'll find is this practice will change your life, because for the first time, you will be able to realize the difference between traction, anything it is that you plan to do with your time, and everything else, which is a distraction. So by making time for traction and planning out the time, the input, not the output, do yourself a favor. Stop running your life on a to-do list. People don't realize how harmful to-do lists are for our psychic well-being, our psychological well-being, because what we don't realize is if you run your life on a to-do list, by the way, just to be very clear, I'm not saying that keeping a list, getting things out of your head and writing them down, that's great. What I'm rallying against is this practice of waking up in the morning and saying, ooh, what do I do with my time? Let me look at my to-do list. If that's what you do every morning, rather than looking at your schedule, you have already lost. Why? Nobody I've ever met in my life, especially during these 5 years of research, and let me tell you, I've been looking for them. Nobody who keeps a to-do list and runs their life on that to-do list finishes everything they plan to do. I've never met such a person who consistently finishes what's on their to-do list. Why? because there's no constraints to a to-do list. We just add more and more and more and more and more. And we get to the end of our day and we look at this list of things we still haven't done. And what does that tell us? What stares us in the face? All these things we promised ourselves we do that we didn't do. And day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, we begin to look at this and say, wait a minute, I'm not very good at keeping promises to myself. I'm lying to myself. I'm incapable of doing what I said I wanted to do, loser. And people start making up these stories that, oh, I must be bad at time management. I'm no good at this. There must be something wrong with me. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's this stupid broken to-do list methodology that's broken. So stop measuring yourself by how many cute little boxes you checked off, and instead measure yourself based on whether you worked on or did whatever it is you wanted to do for as long as you said you would, without distraction. That's it. Don't measure yourself by what you finished. Okay, but Nir, how is that going to work? If I don't measure myself by how I finished, how am I going to get anything done? Here's the kicker. The people who measure themselves solely based on, did I do what I said I was going to do without distraction for as long as I said I would, those people finish more. They check off more things. They actually are more productive than the people who use the to-do list methodology. Because you know what you do when you have a to-do list. You do the easy stuff. You do the urgent stuff. You don't do the hard and important work. As opposed to the people who are able to master their attention and control their focus, they actually accomplish more. So plan the time, the input, and the output will follow. The next thing we have to do is to spend less time communicating and more time concentrating. You have got to spend at least some portion of your day doing reflective work, not just reactive work. Reactive work is the reacting to emails, reacting to Slack notifications, reacting to meetings. That's going to be part of your day. I get that. But if you don't plan at least some part of your day for reflective work, the kind of work that can be done only without distraction, creative work, planning, strategizing, thinking, this all requires you to work without distraction. If you don't have that time in your day, at least some part of your day, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to run real fast in the wrong direction. You have got to have that time in your day. Most people don't make that time. Why? Because we like to be told what to do. We complain about it, but we want email to tell us what to do. We want Slack notifications to tell us what to do. We want our boss to tell us what to do, because thinking is hard work. If you want a leg up on your competitors, if you want a leg up on everybody at your office, make time to think, because nobody else is doing it. Now, all this communicating, all this pinging and dinging comes coupled with external triggers. Now, these external triggers can be a massive source of distraction. In fact, there's one industry where these external triggers are literally a matter of life and death. Did you know that 400,000 Americans every year are harmed because of prescription mistakes? Prescription mistakes. People given the wrong medication or the wrong dosage of medication by healthcare practitioners inside a hospital setting. This is a 100% preventable human error. Now, most hospitals in America, they just say, well, what are we going to do? It's the cost of doing business. Oops, we make mistakes. Until a group of nurses at UCSF decided to get to the bottom of this, and they wanted to see what was causing all these prescription mistakes. And it turns out the cause was distraction. That on average, when nurses were dosing out medication, they were interrupted 10 times per dosing round. These brave nurses came up with a solution that reduced this problem by 88%. 88%. You know what the solution was? It wasn't some multi-million-dollar app. It wasn't some crazy new training program. The solution that almost completely eliminated this problem, believe it or not, was cheap plastic vests. Plastic vests that these nurses wore that told their colleagues, drug round in progress, do not disturb. And they were sending a clear signal that, look, when I am doing this task, I cannot be distracted, because if I'm distracted, my work product will suffer and people's lives are at stake. Now, I know very few of you are in the healthcare profession, but why am I telling you this story? Because it is time we adopt the same thing in everyone's workplace, like this. Every copy of my book, Indistractable, comes with a screen sign. It's a piece of cardstock you pull out of the book, you fold it into thirds, and you put it on your computer monitor. And for some part of your day, not the whole day, I understand you have to be on call for some part of your day, But for a certain part of your day when you are indistractable, you're sending a clear signal to your colleagues that I need to work without distraction. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, but I'm working from home, right? It's not my workplace colleagues that are distracting me. It's my kids. I got you. This is a picture of my wife wearing what we call affectionately the concentration crown. When my daughter was 6 years old, we sat down with her and we said, look, when mommy is wearing this concentration crown, we bought this on Amazon for $5. You can use any silly hat. It doesn't have to be the concentration crown. You can use any ridiculous hat you have lying around the house. When you see mommy wearing this crown, that means she can't be distracted. So what we've done is interrupted the interruption. It works incredibly well with kids. It also works really well with husbands as well. So give this a shot if you have husbands, roommates, kids at home, and you need that time for distraction, because let's give them a break. You know, our kids don't know when we're doing something that requires our full attention without distraction, or if we can be bothered. So send that clear signal when you are doing work, when you can't be distracted. Another thing we can do is to use technology to hack back these external triggers. This is a fantastic feature that comes on everybody's devices these days that almost nobody uses. It's called Do Not Disturb while driving, because one of the objections that many people say when I present this idea of hacking back external triggers is, yeah, but what if I'm on call? What if somebody needs me, right? How are they going to get in touch with me? No problem. If it's something really urgent, if it's a real emergency, but you plan to do that time to do reflective focused work, you turn on with one button, Do Not Disturb while driving. And when this feature is engaged, if someone were to call you, they will get an automatic SMS reply that says, I can't talk right now, but if this is urgent, text back the word urgent. And all they have to do is text back that one word and the message will come through. I've used this technique for about 4 years now. Nobody ever texts the word urgent because they can wait 30 minutes for me to finish my Indistractable work time. But just in case, for that peace of mind, I know if it really is, oh my gosh, your house is on fire, then the message will come through in those cases. Another thing we can do is to clear away this cognitive clutter. How many of us are working on desktops that look like this? We know that all that clutter degrades our performance. We don't have to live like that. Clear away all that clutter. Put it in a folder, put it somewhere else so you can work without distraction from all those external triggers. The same goes with our phones. Oh my goodness, did you know that 2/3 of people with a smartphone, 2/3 of people with a smartphone never change their notification settings? How can we honestly say that technology is addicting us when we haven't even taken 10 minutes to turn off those stupid notification settings that don't serve us? And guess what? There's nothing Mark Zuckerberg can do about that. If we turn those notification settings off, we have to ask ourselves, is this trigger serving me or am I serving it? For all of these beeps and buzzes and boops, we have to ask ourselves, is it serving me or am I serving it? And to adjust those notification settings that don't serve us. And finally, when it comes to our workplace, when it comes to our meetings with our family, we need to declare no phone zones. That if we are going to be with our family, with our colleagues, we have to be there, both present in body and mind, by leaving those devices outside of important engagements. Finally, the last step to becoming indistractable is to prevent distractions with pacts. Pacts utilize an ancient technique called a pre-commitment device that was first documented by the playwright Homer, who wrote the story of Ulysses in the Odyssey. He's this Greek hero who has to sail his ship past the island of the Sirens. Now, the Sirens are these magical creatures that sing this mythical song, and any sailor who hears the Siren song crashes his ship onto the shore of the Sirens Island and dies. Now, Ulysses knows about this threat. He knows this might happen, and he takes steps today to prevent getting distracted tomorrow. How does he do this? He tells his crew to put beeswax in their ears so that they can't hear the siren song. And he instructs them to bind him to the mast of the ship. And he tells them, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, do not let me go. And you know what? The plan works. He's able to sail right past the island of the Sirens without getting distracted, without doing something that he doesn't want to do. Now, I think you see the metaphor here. You are Ulysses. There's lots of distracting stuff out there. And that, of course, could be you there as well, dead on the shore of the Sirens Island. So what we can do is to make what we call a Ulysses pact, so that we can prevent ourselves from getting distracted. Ironically enough, by using technology to prevent getting distracted by technology. Here's a couple great examples. You can use this app Self-Control on your desktop to block out websites that you don't want to access during your focused work time. You can use the Forest app, which is a wonderful free app. I use it all the time. My daughter uses it as well. Every time I want to do work time without distraction, I open this app, I dial in how much time I want to spend doing reflective work. I push this button that says plant, and this cute little virtual tree is planted. Now, if I pick up the phone and do anything with it, that cute little virtual tree dies. And I don't want to be a virtual tree murderer. And so that's enough of a reminder to say, nope, I made a promise with myself that I will not check my phone for this period of time. Very effective. You can get yourself a focus mate at focusmate.com. You can sign up for a particular time of day, be matched with an individual who has the same exact goal as you do to work without distraction. I like this company so much. I use it every single week. I loved it so much. I actually invested in the company. It's a wonderful way to hold yourself accountable by having someone else who has the same goal. You log in, you're matched with another person. You say, okay, what are you working on? What are you working on? 10 seconds. And then for the next 50 minutes, you work without distraction. You have that other person holding you accountable. Very effective. So we can reduce distraction with these pacts by using tech to block out tech distraction. But let me give you a word of warning that this particular technique, this fourth technique of preventing distraction with a pact, can backfire. Number one, it has to be done last. You have to use the other three techniques first of mastering the internal triggers, making time for traction, hacking back the external triggers. If you jump straight to this technique, it will backfire. It will not work unless you've done the other three first. The other thing to be wary of and to be careful of is that for some people, when they fall off the horse, when they get distracted, as all of us invariably do on the path to becoming indistractable, some people can't get back on the horse. They have a really tough time getting back on task and trying again and again. Who are these people? Turns out statistically, these people are people who are unable to give themselves self-compassion. Giving yourself self-compassion makes you much more likely to reach your long-term goals. Well, how do we cultivate self-compassion? We cultivate self-compassion by talking to ourselves the way we would talk to a good friend. For example, if I were to tell you about what happened with my daughter and that I was very embarrassed that I was checking my phone when I planned to be with someone I love very much, would you tell me that I'm a bad father, that I'm a horrible human being? You wouldn't tell me that if you were my good friend. And yet that was the exact dialogue that was going on in my own head. I was being a bully to myself and not offering myself self-compassion. And it wasn't helpful and it wasn't true. And here's what else isn't true. This ridiculous notion that technology is hijacking our brains, that there's nothing we can do about it. Rubbish. There is so much we can do about it. We can master the internal triggers. We can make time for traction. We can hack back the external triggers, and we can prevent distraction with pacts. There's a lot more in the book. We only covered what we can do as individuals, but of course we operate in different contexts and environments. So the second half of the book is about how do we raise indistractable kids? How do we build an indistractable workplace? And how do we have indistractable relationships? So I hope you'll check out the entire book, but the message I want to leave you with is that we can do this. We really can get the best of these tools without letting them get the best of us. We can all become indistractable. Thank you so much for listening today. I have a quick request for you. I would love for you to take this quick survey, just a few questions. If you go to this URL, opinion2.us, you'll find a very short survey there. There's 5 questions. If you have a phone handy, you can just point your camera at that QR code. If you need to reach out to me, please do so. If you want to reach out to me offline, you can reach out to me at that URL at the bottom, nirandfar.com. That's my blog, Nir spelled like my first name. So that's N-I-R and far.com. And thank you so much for joining me today. Now, we do have some time for questions. Let me just stop sharing here. And let's see how much time. Oh, we have plenty of time. We have about 20 minutes for questions. And I would love to see what's on your mind. So why don't we do this? We have 65 people here. That's fantastic. I'm so glad everybody's here. Thanks for the kind words, by the way. I appreciate lots of thanks, which is nice to see. Let's take some questions if anybody has any. If I think the best way to do this is if you raise your hand, or if you feel more comfortable putting in the chat, either one. If you raise your hand, I can patch you in so everybody can hear you. But if you want to just type out a question, that's fine too. I'll check both. So feel free. Let's see if anybody's got any questions. They can type it in the chat. I don't see any raised hands yet. Okay, so we got one from Lewis here. How much time do you think is healthy each day? I know each person is different. Healthy, you mean for tech use? I'm guessing you're asking. So this is where it's a personal decision. So, it ruffles my feathers when I hear some professor without a social media account telling people how they shouldn't use social media. Many of us, our jobs rely on social media. We would get fired if we didn't use these tools. We have to use email throughout our day. It's essential for our jobs. So I don't think it's up to me or anyone else to tell you, here's how much time you should and should not spend on using one technology or another. The whole concept of screen time is a completely bogus idea. It's really about what you're doing, how much you're doing it, what you would be doing instead of doing it, and who you are that's doing it. These factors all must be considered when we think about how we use these technologies. It's not so simple to just say, one technology is good, one technology is bad, this much time is good, this much time is bad. It's just not that simple. Where I think we can address this effectively is to ask ourselves this simple question: how can we turn our values into time? How can we turn our values into time? What do I mean by that? What are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. Values are defined as attributes of the person you want to become. So you have to ask yourself, how would the person I want to become spend their time? And if your answer to that is, yeah, you know what, the person I'd want to become would spend an hour a day on video games. Great. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Why is that somehow morally inferior to watching, the crazy stuff that's happening on the news about worrying about somebody's problem thousands of miles away, as opposed to dealing with our own life? There's nothing morally inferior or superior to one pastime or another. Do whatever you want to do, but do it with intent. Put it on your schedule. That's how we make sure that we live according to our values. Okay, let's see here. So Ty, I see you've got your hand raised. So let me see, how do I add you? Electrical, put in waiting room, remove report. You know what? There we go. If you just unmute, there you go.
There we go.
I figured it out. Technology. How's it going?
I like the point about not structuring your life using to-do lists, but I'm wondering for you, when you are in that sort of concentrated block, how do you track like what you're actually doing? Do you do some sort of task management, and how do you do that without getting swept away by those tasks and just checking off boxes?
Yeah. So again, there's nothing wrong with writing down things and getting them out of your head. I would highly recommend that. What I don't like, what I think is counterproductive, is when we run our life based on that list. If we look at our to-do list before we check our calendar, that's a mistake. So we want to get things out of our head, but then we immediately put that in our schedule. Right. And if it's for little tiny tasks, many times I'll batch those together. I don't time box 15-minute tasks. I'll do a 30-minute task of admin. Right. And so that will be a bunch of little tasks that I'll check off, but I have time allocated for it, because when I didn't do that, before I discovered time boxing, I would do that easy stuff first, and I'd never get to the big important stuff. All right, let's see if anybody else wants to raise their hand. I'm happy to let you in, and you can ask your question just like Ty did. Thank you so much for that, Ty. If not, then I'll go ahead and take a question here from the chat. Let's see. Mariana says, hey, I'm from Brazil, and I just wanted to say that you are amazing. Oh, thanks so much. Thank you for all the information. That was really neat. Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for the compliment. Let's see. Reflection time is not my friend. Any recommendations on how to start that positive habit? So it's really about these 4 techniques in concert. So number 1, making sure that you have tactics ready to go, so that when you feel that discomfort, primarily from boredom. I know thinking is hard work. We do not like to think. Our brains are what we call cognitive misers. We save the energy of thinking. Most people hate thinking. We would much rather be told what to do than to actually have to think for ourselves. All of us do this. So that takes effort. That takes extra inertia. So what you have to do is to make sure that in advance, okay, this is going to be hard. Reflective work is going to be hard. What am I going to do when it's hard? Am I going to escape? Am I going to scroll? Am I going to drink? Am I going to eat? Am I going to go, what I used to do, I'm embarrassed to say this, it was so difficult for me to do reflective work. I would find anything to do but the work, right? Oh, my desk is kind of messy. Let me tidy up my desk. The laundry, the laundry needs to be done. Let me go do that real quick. I would find every reason to not do the hard work of writing, because writing requires reflective time. So it's about step one, having those techniques ready to go during that reflective work time, that in advance how you will respond to that discomfort. Making time for traction, making sure it is on your calendar, removing the external triggers, hacking back all those triggers that don't serve you. And then as the line of last defense, the firewall is preventing distraction with some kind of pact, having someone else hold you accountable, using technology to block out the potential distractions, all kinds of things you can do. I promise you, if you spend time using these techniques, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. There's a lot more in the book. If you spend an hour and a half with the book, unless there's some kind of underlying pathology, anyone can use these techniques to become indistractable. So let's see here. Do you practice Pomodoro or anything during your time of deep reflective work? What do you think are worthwhile things to do during the breaks? Stretching, for example. So Pomodoro, I think, is good. It's not enough, because Pomodoro doesn't address these other parts. Pomodoro is one way of time boxing. It's wonderful if it works for you, but you can't Pomodoro your way out of a task you really don't feel like doing. Right? That's where it doesn't work, because either you won't start that task because you dread it so much, or during the task, you'll say, this sucks, and you'll quit. Let's face it, the reason we don't do what we know we're going to do, or what we know we should do, is not because we don't know what to do. We all know what to do. Who doesn't know that to be in great shape, you have to exercise and eat right? Does anybody not know that? Does anybody not know that to excel at your job, you have to do the hard work, especially the hard work that other people don't want to do? We know that. Does anybody not know that to have good relationships, you have to invest the time, you have to be fully present with people? We know all this. And frankly, if you don't know it, Google it. It's all out there. We know what to do. We don't know how to stop getting in our own way. That's the real problem. Why do we keep getting distracted? Because we don't feel like doing what we know we should do. It's all about these feelings. So that is the core message here of the book. We have to start with those internal triggers, or none of the other tips, techniques, and hacks work. So we have to start there, and then we can layer on the other techniques. Okay, so let's see here. Patrick, let me unmute you.
Hi there.
Hey, Patrick.
Hi, thank you for this. I'm curious about what you think regarding the work of Tristan Harris and the Center for Humane Technology. They're saying, and I think a lot of people saw this in The Social Dilemma, that the deck is actually quite stacked against people, even people with good intentions that use a lot of these tools and tricks to avoid distraction, when in fact the products are becoming more and more designed for attention and even addiction. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'm going to chew your ear off on this one. So I was interviewed for The Social Dilemma. I'm in the credits. If you go to the credits, you can see my name. And they called me up, and I sat down with them for 3 hours. And I told them everything I'd researched, everything that was in Indistractable. And they used zero from not only my interview. If you watch the film, there wasn't even one person who had a contradictory opinion, not one. The Social Dilemma is the kind of documentary that, if it's like calling Jaws a documentary about sharks. It is so one-sided and to the point of being unethical. It's like you went to a doctor and the doctor says, you have a horrible disease and I have the cure and I know the cure, but I'm not going to give it to you. That's what they did with this stupid movie. They could tell people what to do about this problem, but instead they had this agenda to scare the crap out of people, as opposed to empowering people. What is Mark Zuckerberg going to do with his crazy algorithms if you turn off your notifications? Can he reach into your phone and turn them back on? And that's kindergarten stuff. Anybody can do that. But without talking about these solutions that we have at our disposal, I wrote about them in the book. I told them what the solutions were for 3 hours, and they didn't tell anyone any of them. And ironically, they did exactly what the social media companies wanted. The social media companies want you to believe you're addicted. And it's completely, utterly bogus. You are not addicted. Some people are addicted. Some people are addicted to alcohol. Is everyone who has a glass of wine an alcoholic? Of course not. So why do we somehow think that everybody who uses social media is addicted? You're not addicted. You're distracted. But when we call it what it really is, oh, that sucks. Now I don't have anybody to blame. There's no dealer. There's no pusher. Now it's on me. Ugh, that's no fun. And this message we have to resist, because not only is calling this stuff addictive, disrespectful to people who have the pathology of addiction. We don't talk about OCD this way. We don't talk about Tourette's this way. Why do we somehow talk about addiction this way? That everybody's addicted? Bullshit. It's not true. Secondly, it's incredibly disempowering, because what do people do when they're told there's nothing to be done? That, didn't you see the movie? There were these algorithms that have our brains on these puppet strings that move us around like little voodoo dolls. Why should I even try doing anything? And guess what? People don't. People don't. When people think that they're addicted, when people think that their brains are hijacked, as Tristan tells us in his article, they don't do anything about the problem, right? Hijacking is not playing some video games. Hijacking is what they did to us on 9/11. Right? Hijacking is not, oh my gosh, I like playing Angry Birds and scrolling Instagram. Give me a break. It's a whole nother league. We're not injecting Instagram. We're not snorting Snapchat. And we have to stop talking with this ridiculous language that completely ignores the science, and have a balanced view of, look, overuse and abuse is bad. I'm not saying that excessive use is good for you. I'm not saying that we should use more of it. I'm saying that we need to look at it in a rational, empowering way and realize that tech companies are not going to fix the problem for us. The geniuses in Washington are not going to fix this for us. There will never be legislation that tells Facebook, make your product less engaging. You know why? Because we don't want these products to be less engaging. Hey, Netflix, your shows are really entertaining. Can you please make them less interesting? Hey, Apple, your phones, they're so user-friendly. Can you make them harder to use? That's not a problem. It's progress. We want products to be good. That's the point of these products. So what we have to do is to stop holding our breath, waiting for someone else to fix this problem. Why would we wait? Master the internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, prevent distraction with pacts. It doesn't matter what race, color, creed, economic status you are. Anyone can do these techniques right now. And that's what we have to start with. Sorry, I get a little emotional about this stuff. Okay, where were we here? Anybody want to raise their hand for another question? Happy to take more. I hope I didn't scare anybody. Sorry. Okay, I'll go scroll down here to the questions here. I'm looking at the chat. Thanks for all the kind words, everyone. I really appreciate that. How do you reinforcing? Okay, so there's a question here. How do you factor in when distraction creeps in and in as a means of forcing a necessary break, meaning cognitive fatigue increases with time? How do you get a read on what is necessary time for a break versus what is a distraction as you define it? Okay, great. So I think the question that you're asking here, Desiree, is how do I accommodate my feelings, my moods? What if I'm getting tired, right? Fatigue is real, for example. So what do we do about that? First of all, we need to know what is real and what is not real. So one of the chapters in the book, I talk about reimagining your temperament, that we know that there are certain myths that we make about our temperament, such as, for example, ego depletion. Ego depletion is this idea that we run out of willpower. And this was a very well-known idea that willpower is like gas in a gas tank or battery power on your phone, that you run out of willpower. And there was a psychologist that kind of promoted this idea, and you probably heard this in the popular literature. Maybe you've said it to yourself. I certainly did. I'd come home from work and I'd say, oh boy, I'm spent today, right? I've had such a hard day. Give me that pint of Ben & Jerry's. I'm going to go sit on the couch and watch Netflix. Why? Because I have no more willpower left. I've spent it all. Well, as we do in the social sciences, when a conclusion sounds a little too good to be true, we replicate the study. And so what other folks did was to run these experiments, and they found that in fact, willpower as a depletable resource, this whole idea of ego depletion, didn't hold up. That as far as we know, these meta studies, studies of studies, have found that this effect is not real, except in one group of people. You may be familiar with the work of Carol Dweck. She wrote a wonderful book called Mindset. She did a study at Stanford where she found that in fact, there was only one group of people who really did experience ego depletion, who really did run out of willpower like someone would run out of gas in a gas tank. And those people, and only those people, were people who believed that willpower was a limited resource. That's it. For the rest of us, they didn't experience the ego depletion. It was only if you believed it was a limited resource. By the way, this supports this case I'm trying to make around why it's so dangerous to think that we're addicted to technology when we're just distracted by it, because we conform to our beliefs. We conform to our opinions about ourselves. If you believe you've run out of willpower, well, guess what? You have. So it's important to understand what is a shaping of our temperament based on how we think of ourselves versus what's real. And so what we do here is we adapt our time box schedule over time. So we don't make a time box schedule once and set it and forget it. That's not what we do. We're not drill sergeants. We don't say, oh, we have to do this and this and this because that's what we said we would do. No, we're scientists. We run experiments. A scientist proposes a hypothesis, runs a test, looks at the results, and then runs another test based on those results to get to the conclusions. So that's what we do with our schedule. You know, for example, I found I didn't enjoy writing at night. I didn't have as much energy. It wasn't as much fun. Okay, so now I write in the mornings. I'm much more energetic in the mornings. I enjoy writing much more. So that's fine. So we want to look at that time box calendar and make adjustments based on our these trends that we see, and we can make those adjustments in the week ahead. Planning for breaks is another good idea. If you say, hey, you know what? 30 minutes, I'm going strong, 45 minutes, I'm going strong. But you know what? Yesterday, I found that more than 45 minutes, I need a break. Well, you can plan for that break in the day ahead. Just don't do that in the minute, right? If you say to yourself, you're going to work for that period of time, keep going for that day, make the change for the day ahead. Don't change it in the moment. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to scroll through some more questions. If anybody wants to use the function to raise their hand through the little button there that I can see that, I'm happy to let you chime in here. Thank you so much for the kind words. There's so many compliments here. I really appreciate that in the chat. Thank you. It means a lot to me. Appreciate it. Let's see. Okay. I wonder if anybody. Oh, a question about, is the book available in Spain? It is being translated into Spanish as we speak. It's not yet available. The English edition is available in Spain on Amazon, but the Spanish edition is coming. Can you provide some tips on mastering self-compassion? So the best tip I can give you is talk to yourself the way you would talk to a good friend. So as you're surfing the urge, as you're exploring it with curiosity rather than contempt, the conversation we change in our head, if you can follow that rule, that's the best piece of advice I can give you, is to try and talk in the third person. It's almost like pulling a Donald Trump. You know how Donald Trump always talks about himself in the third person? Do that. It sounds crazy, but it actually does increase your sense of self-compassion if you can talk to yourself the way you would talk to a good friend. And having that, displacing yourself as a third party, looking within from an outsider perspective and talking to yourself the way you would talk to a good friend, that's really the key to self-compassion. So I think I've looked through all the questions. I'm so happy everybody's still sticking around. That means a lot to me. Thank you. I'm happy to answer if anybody has any other questions. We've got maybe time for maybe one more. Happy to be helpful any way I can. I hope everybody's enjoying the digital wellness experience. A question here about, what do you think about listening to music or writing as a way of surfing the urge? Sure. I think that's great. That's about one of the only things I would do during surfing the urge. So I constantly have a notepad here and a pen when I'm surfing the urge. Writing down what I'm experiencing is an amazing way of processing those urges. And again, just what we're doing here is we're giving ourselves greater agency. What we find is that a habit is defined as an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. So what we're trying to do is to interrupt that habit, that uncomfortable state that leads us directly to check, directly to scroll, directly to look for some escape with a bit of thought. And so if that means you're writing it down for a minute or two, if that means you're just, you have a script that you're reciting, maybe a mantra, anything that can help you slow down, experience that urge, wait it out for a few minutes until that urge crests and subsides, that would be a wonderful thing to do. Okay, Patrick, I have another question.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just a quick one on sort of future gazing a little bit. The platforms and content is becoming, a lot of it based on data, just knowing what people like, and targeting as well, more compelling. As you look into the future, you see what's happening with AR, VR in particular, more immersive forms of media, more compelling in many ways, more emotive. Is there anything that keeps you up at night? Any concerns you have that we need to be mindful of as we go forward? It kind of takes on another level of deeper engagement.
Yeah, I think we are right to be concerned in that I think that technology will become increasingly persuasive and pervasive. That we will see that technology will not be less distracting. It will only be more distracting. And I think, we will see the Googles and Facebooks of the world quickly displaced. I will bet anybody money that we will not be talking about the current iteration of these, mind-melting technologies in the next 10 years. There'll be something else. There has to be something else. We already see that, young people aren't using Facebook anymore, right? Like, it's persuading nobody. It's a dumpster fire. So they left, and where do they go? They went to TikTok. They went to Instagram, where there isn't all that political rubbish and, stuff they don't want to see. They want to connect with their friends. So they went to platforms that didn't have all that, the garbage they didn't want to see. And we're going to continue to see that evolution. But these products are also going to get increasingly engaging. That's what they're designed to do. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as we know how to put them in their place. I don't see any kind of technology that is insurmountable, until we plug ourselves into the matrix somehow, which we can't do yet. I don't see anything that we can't overcome, because, if you were to summarize Indistractable into one mantra, if you really want like the one sentence summary of Indistractable, it's this: the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. That one of the evolutionary gifts that we have, that we can do better than any other animal on the face of the earth, is that we can predict what is going to happen with higher fidelity than any other animal, right? We can predict the future. And that skill means that there is no distraction that we can't overcome if we take steps today to overcome it tomorrow. That if we wait till the last minute, right? If you wait till the chocolate cake is on the fork, you're going to eat it. If the cigarette is in your hand, you're going to smoke it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night, it's going to be the first thing you reach for in the morning when you wake up before you say hello to your loved ones. They're going to get you. It's too late if you wait to the last minute. But if you plan ahead, if you take steps today to prevent getting distracted tomorrow, there's nothing you can't do, right? Of course, you can overcome any of these algorithms, any of their tricks. Look, I know all their brain hacks. I know how they get you hooked. I wrote the book Hooked. I know all their tricks, and I'll tell you they're good. They're not that good, right? This is not mind control. This is not hijacking your brain. If you take steps today, it doesn't matter how good their algorithms are. It doesn't matter how persuasive the technology is. Very simple things we can do, but you have to act now. You cannot leave it up to the last minute, because they will get you if you wait to the last minute. And so there's nothing that I see on the horizon that I think we can't overcome with forethought. Great. Well, I think we're out of time here. So in the spirit of time boxing, it's 10 p.m. over here in Singapore, where I'm calling in from. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. It was a real pleasure. Some fantastic questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If I didn't get time to answer your question, please feel free to check out my website. I'll put it here for you, nearandfar.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to ask me anything offline. Happy to take your questions there. And again, thank you so much. Stay strong, stay indistractable, everyone. Bye-bye.